All right, it is 7 o'clock on May 3rd. I'm going to call the East Lyme Inland Wetland Agency meeting to order. All right, I have Phyllis Berger, Don Feminster, I'm Kristen Chantrell. I have seated our alternate Nancy Kalau, Sam Sims, Greg McIntyre, Gary Gaishel is our Inland Wetlands agent, and Sue Spang is here as our recording secretary. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first on the agenda today is the public delegations. Public delegation is the time when members of the public are invited to speak to the commission about certain matters, issues, or concerns related to approved wetland permits, and in-house proposals or general topics of discussion are open to comment. Any agenda items, referrals, applications subject to a decision by the commission, a public hearing, or in litigation may not be discussed. Do I have anyone here from the public that would like to speak?
Good evening, Gary and the Wetlands Commission. My name is John Bialawans Jr. of East Lyme. I'm here before you tonight to bring to your attention about an ongoing wetlands violation that is not being resolved. The property is located between Mustaway Road and Route 161. I met with the first selectman and Gary once already. And Gary did apologize to me about this situation and everything else, which I commend him on that. I have called Gary on numerous times the week of April 11th, 22, every day, and on April 26th and 27th. Also to compliment Gary on calling us on Good Friday and explaining the situation to us. It starts by the demolition of the old gas station on Route 161 that Gary told the property owners the town told them to take the building down. No permits, no wetlands permits. They're working within 5 feet of the wetlands. No demolition permit, and it's a wonder the town didn't do the work also. The first house built on the property that they bought from Mike Sawicki had no wetlands flagging or outline done by professional soil scientists. The second house location and land is being worked on with no building permit, no wetlands permit, no marking of the wetlands issued, as was told by Gary to us. The two owners or partners should be given a cease and desist order put on them immediately, like we asked Gary for the past month. This is not the first time the owners had wetlands violations on them. Just look at Colton Road in East Lyme, what they did. I told Gary that they don't have any respect for his authority or the wetlands and what he says on this violation. Jesus Christ, I can't see today. I was welding on, now I can't see. What I just said goes for the Inland Wetlands Commission for not doing their job at all. I could go on with more details on what Gary and the Wetlands Commission do to other violators in this town, and why they are getting away with this violation on Mustaway Road. Who is getting favors done between whomever about this violation? My PS is, how come the Eastern Connecticut Conservation District, the Great Neck Improvement Club, the All Habitat Service, State of Connecticut, DEP, need a permit from the Wetlands Commission and Gary? I would just tell them, just do the work because nothing will happen to you. everything will be overlooked, just like Mustaway Road and 161. I'm sorry to say, but actions speak louder than words. As you can see, what I have said, nothing is being done. Just put a cease and desist order and they will want to do it right and not try to get away with something illegal. Gary and the Wetlands Commission can tell the two of them how they look playing those childish games they are doing. They should paint the whole fence orange, because now they put a fence up there and put some poles in and they started painting them orange and everything else. So you can see that they're just playing childish games with Gary and the Wetlands Commission. Now, Gary and the Wetlands God, I'm never going to weld again in my life. See how Gary and the Wetlands Commission, what they think about all of you, because they're just using you. Come right to the point. That's it. Do you want a copy, Gary, or because my machine went out? I'll give her. You want to give it to the secretary? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Byallowens, for your comments. Is there anyone else here that would like to speak? Okay. No public hearing tonight. Do I hear an acceptance of the meeting minutes of the April 5th, 2022 regular meeting? Would
Make a
anyone like
motion that we accept the minutes of April 5th, 2022.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
I'll second. Phyllis.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
I'm actually going to abstain because I didn't look over the minutes. All right, ex officio reports. She will probably step in later, so we'll jump to that when she gets here. Starting under new business, we have the application of Dan Mullins, Executive Director, Eastern Connecticut Conservation District, Town of East Lyme, owner, for determination of permitted non-regulated activity for the installation of tree filters, all located within existing town right-of-way at various locations on Latimer Drive, Cavison Drive, and Jobel Street.
Good evening, everybody.
Thank you.
I apologize for the handouts. I ran out of coloring. Some of them started getting just kind of washed out in blue, and then I went to black and white. So I'm working from home right now. So I'm Dan Mullins, Executive Director of the Eastern Connecticut Conservation District, and we're working with the Town of East Lyme Planning and Engineering Department. Alex Close is here to answer questions too, if you have any for him. We're proposing to install 4 tree filter units, 2 on Latimer Drive, 2 on Cavison Drive, and we have several backup sites just in case the call before you dig doesn't pan out. And I know you guys are here to protect inland water and resources, so I appreciate that. Tree filters, that's exactly what they do. And there's been some third-party testing done on removal rates of tree filters. So for total suspended solids, they remove more than 83% of total suspended solids. The nitrogen is greater than 50%. Phosphorus is greater than 60%. Heavy metals between 35 and 95%. Bacteria removal is greater than 85%. And oil and grease greater than 80%. So the package that I gave you shows some installation of tree filters along here on Pennsylvania Avenue that we did with the town several years ago, and it just kind of shows the installation process. You basically excavate a hole, put some crushed stone in there, level it off, make it flush to the road, install the tree filter, and patch it with some asphalt, plant a tree in there, and the ones along Pennsylvania Avenue were European hornbeams, as you can see. So the tree filter locations, and there's also a single sheet that shows several tree filters we installed out in the Colony Road neighborhood. Again, they're in black and white, so they're not as easy to see, but it kind of shows you what they look like. They're pretty unintrusive. And then the third documented package, shows the locations that are proposed. Two of them are on Latimer Drive, and if you look toward the bottom of that first image, it shows you the tree filter 1, tree filter 2, and we picked out 2 backup sites on Latimer Drive as well. On the next page, you have Cavison Drive. There's going to be 2 tree filters installed on Cavison Drive. And then the third sheet just shows another backup tree filter location on Jovil Drive. So I'm here if you have any questions.
I have a question.
Yep.
I work sometimes with pollinator pathways, and they have an interest in planting native trees.
Yep.
And I noticed you said one of the trees was a European something.
Hornbeam, yep.
Are the trees that you're going to be planting in these containers going to be native?
We can select whatever the town chooses. The hornbeams were selected because they're rather columnar, and they're close to downtown area, so we wanted trees that don't have a broad canopy. But we can work with the town and select whatever you guys want.
Can we put in the process, the approval process, that they be native trees, Gary?
Yeah, you could. The application here is for a determination of permitted non-regulated activity. So if the commission determined that the permit was required, there'd be no requirement that they put in a specific tree. But I think, naturally speaking, we would plant non-native, invasive species. That's something we would not do.
Would be more than willing
So long
to.
as the tree is native, I think as a policy for the town, that's what we.
Yeah, because I think Marjorie is going to be doing some studying. The trees that are located on town property, the ones that are native opposed to non-native. So I think it would be a good path to have the new trees that are being installed be natives.
We can accommodate that
I'm sure you
request.
can find something.
Yep.
Yeah.
Not a problem.
Yukon has a plethora of street trees that are
Right.
native.
Yep.
So am I right in understanding that we're to decide whether this actually needs to be a permitted activity?
Correct.
And does it really impact waterways per se?
Correct. Is there likelihood of adverse impact? And if you look at our regulations, section 4.2A,
Okay, just pull that right up.
the following operations and uses shall be permitted in non-regulated uses in wetlands and water courses, provided they do not disturb the natural and indigenous character of the wetland or water course by removal or deposition of material, alteration or destruction of water flow, or pollution of the wetland or water course. And A is conservation of soil, vegetation, water, fish, shellfish, and wildlife. And then B is outdoor recreation activities primarily. So my interpretation of the application here is we're trying to improve water quality. So I would believe that's conservation of water. My opinion is that it would be a non-regulated activity. That said, I will note that we did issue a permit for the street trees, the tree filters that were previously installed on Latimer
Colony Road.
Road. So County Drive. When Judy Rondo was in Dan's position. So that was at that time. Although Judy didn't request the determination, she just merely submitted the application. So, that said, it was just as easy to issue the permit as it was to do the
So I have one more comment. The people who live in that area, are they aware of this and are they on board, or do they?
We haven't had an opportunity to speak with them, but we did have, when we were talking about another site, we were going to go out and canvass the neighborhood and talk to the neighbors about it.
I can speak to that, Dan, if you want.
Yep, sure.
So for the record, Alex Close, town engineer. To answer your question about the trees first, the town doesn't have a preference as long as the canopy is not obstructing a traffic safety issue. So any kind of closed canopy tree, we don't have any predestined, or we can do some kind of a native grass too if we find out that there's a lot of overhead shade and we're a tree canopy conflict. We can go with grasses as well. we're totally, we can work with Gary and the commission to find whatever kind of vegetation you guys want to see in the filter. So what we have done is we've selected locations around town that are, keep in mind, all of these filters are going to be within the town right away and attached to the town's existing drainage network. So we will not be creating any new point discharges with these filters. The filters are going to have a high-level bypass that are going to be adjacent to an existing catch basin. So they're going to be within town property. We've also selected these locations in an area that they wouldn't obstruct any kind of sight distance to make any sort of a traffic hazard. And we've also selected them so they're not immediately in front of anybody's driveway or immediately adjacent to, anybody's driveway. And we made sure that they wouldn't be blocking major frontage of a house and things like that. So while we have not individually spoken with all of these residents on this and on this program, we have tried to be conscientious to ensure that it's not going to be unsightly in any way, or that it's not going to be immediately in front of somebody's, view or something like that. The other thing to keep in mind with these new locations is that the previous first selectman has already had signed into an agreement the installation of these filters some years ago. With the pandemic and everything like that and delays, this has been a delayed project, and those trees were supposed to go off of Mallard, is it Oriole? Was it Egret Road? And we had those locations already pre-selected, but in the time of that selection and now, Comcast has run network cables on both sides of the road, and so that would be an issue, and we can't actually install those tree filters. So we had gone out to scout the sites, selected them, and those were the initial sites that we were going to utilize. And so what we kind of had to do a very last minute change in direction on where we were going to put these, that they still could impact by treating water quality in Latimer, specifically close to the mouth of the Niantic. So that's where we kind of had to kind of immediately shift gears and choose these new locations. So again, we tried to do them in locations that would be no safety issues, not going to be blocking, any kind of sidewalk paths or anything like that, and not going to be in an area where they're unsightly to any resident. It's not, right at their driveway or right in kind of in their immediate front yard or anything like that. That being said, we can work with Gary and send out some letters and just see if there's any large objection to these. However, keeping in mind these are going to be installed and maintained by the town and installed on town property. These homeowners are not going to have any expectation to do any kind of upkeep. They'll be maintained by town staff along with the rest of our drainage system within the town right away. Does that answer your questions?
So what kind of grasses are you talking about? Ornamental grasses?
So we have some beach grasses. Like if you go over on the Grand Street area, we have some trees. They're different, but they are still tree filters. They act in a different way in the sense that they're not connected to a discharge system. They completely infiltrate all of the stormwater, but you can see some of the grasses that are actually right to the east of 161 along Grand Street, Smith Street, in that neighborhood. There are some grasses. Our preference would be to do trees. The grasses would be wherever we determine that maybe there's too much shade once the canopy is come into full bloom and we've got the full cover. We wouldn't want to have a conflict with trees that they're going to be fighting for sunlight or anything like that. The goal is to install trees, and the grasses would be kind of a plan B if it's too much of a shady area. But the goal will be to do trees.
So how high would these grasses be?
So we would probably maintain the grasses lower than 3 feet in height.
So then you're going to require maintenance because they're going to have to be cut at
Yes.
certain points, so then they grow back.
Yep.
To a tree, which is
Well, the tree. So both we maintain all of the trees and grasses currently along Colony, along Pennsylvania Avenue direct, and the subsequent neighborhoods are already maintained. And even the trees, believe it or not, we do quite an extensive bit of pruning, not only for the health of the tree, but also to ensure that that both pedestrian and vehicles aren't going to be interrupted by the canopy. So we actually already do, in the spring and fall, maintain all of the filters. We do cut all of the grasses in the fall, and we do also do prunings in the spring and fall prior to the main growth season already, and then we restore any mulch or any rocks that are in the filters. So that's all stuff that we're doing anyway. So we would just add this to the schedule when we do the ones on Colony, because they're close by. We would do these as well. Whether it's a grass or a tree, it'll require pretty much the same level of maintenance.
So who's paying for this? Is it something that's being charged to the town, or?
So
is this
I
an
can let Dan
environmental-
speak more on it, but it's through a grant program. So the Eastern Conservation District has a Clean Water Act grant that's funding the actual installation costs and the purchasing. From that point forward, the town will be owning and maintaining these. So once they're installed, it will be on the town to maintain them as part of their general drainage infrastructure. And like I said, those conversations have already kind of come and gone when the previous first selectman had signed on in participation with Eastern Conservation. And it's just now that we're getting into the point where we're actually going to be able to put the things in the ground. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. What kind of a decision are we being asked to make?
So we just need to either say, yes, you require an application, or no, go ahead and best of luck.
I move that we suggest that they don't really need an application, a permit from this commission, and that they should proceed.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh,
Yes.
we should have discussed it, but we were discussing.
Discussion?
But so we sort of.
As part of that discussion is, I was going to say that the commission should make a finding that no permits required pursuant to section 4.2A.
Should we amend the initial?
So we can just make a second motion.
Make a finding, you said?
Yes. That
That
the
there's,
activity is exempt under section
Okay.
4.2A. No permit required.
I move to make a finding that the activity is exempt under section 4.2A.
No permit is required.
do I hear a second to that second motion?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you for your
Yeah,
time.
thank you for doing that. I think it's going to be a great benefit.
Yeah.
Cleaner water
And
is a
I
good
will
thing.
address, it is a section 319 grant from the Clean Water Act, which is to address non-point source pollution
Great.
to improve water quality in Marion River.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. All right, under new business, request of James Bollier. I'm sorry? Bollier for Giants Neck Improvement Club, Inc. for an extension of permit 16-9 Mammocock Road, GNB, for activity around the upper Nahantic Lake as noted on the permit.
I guess I can give some background.
Go ahead.
Sure. Background, my understanding is Mr. Blair at the first meeting saying we need to update and renew the permit, request an extension. So I thought we'd bring it before the commission and request that. The permit before you expired on August 25th of 2021. That's coming into obviously 2022, almost a year from that date, in May. Question here is, do they need to reapply for a permit? I believe technically the answer is yes. However, it's going to be the same request of a previously issued permit. So I'm not 100% certain here, but I do think we could look to, extend this. At the same time, a new permit. We have a full process and procedure for that. So you attended last night's workshop, heard that there's a 15-day appeal period, so that would open the window up to some neighbor or someone to petition. But nonetheless, you're looking just to build the area, remove those activities regularly, remove dead trees from the shoreline. So if it's a relatively low impact activity. Again, it's this agency's decision as to whether or not they're going to be
required to reapply. Further?
Only concerning the dating, it's a 10-year permit which required a 5-year extension, which could not be done for obvious reasons. And so I contacted Gary, and I'd just like to comment that anything that has been done has been communicated with Gary, usually in writing. I don't believe there's any conflict. Everything would remain the same as it's been for the last 20-plus years that I've been maintaining that pond. So nothing's going to change. So I work with Bill Shear on opening culverts without getting the town's expense in it, and we do what we can.
So, if I may, Kristen, I think we have two paths here, as I see it. One is to consider the extension, and the other is to ask for a new permit. And the benefit of asking for a new permit is it would allow a period where somebody could request a public hearing.
Correct.
Could we not apply that to the same process to the extension and say, we'll consider the extension, we're going to wait till our next scheduled meeting to approve if we do, so that somebody can come in with a petition saying we have a public hearing request and we want to do that. Is that confusing?
Running through my mind legally how this works, because
So was this, the initial permit was a 10-year permit with a 5-year extension, that expired?
It's issued for 5 years, from 2016 to 2021. Right?
Okay.
That's the 5-year permit. And so when you issue a permit, the applicant is entitled to come back and request an extension for an additional 5 years, up to.
Oh, up to 10 years.
Up to 10 years.
I
At the end
see.
of 10, we have to renew.
So if we were to grant an extension, would that go from the initial permit date? So that, because we're like a year off now, so would it be now they'd have to come back in 4 years versus 5?
You would
Okay.
put it, I would recommend we determine that, and then I would probably run off of this date and say, okay, granting the extension from the August 25th, 2021 date forward.
Yep. That makes sense to me.
Mhm.
But I'm just thinking if you grant the extension, the matter can be left on the agenda, so we would qualify there. But again, on the agenda, it says it's a request for an extension, so that's
It's kind of
very explicit.
It's kind of the umbrella theory that, if we don't leave it on the agenda and just approve it, somebody could come in a week from now and say, whoa, I need a public hearing here, and we'd be like, sorry, that's done.
Well, certainly, if the agency doesn't take any action on it tonight, we leave it on the agenda for the next regular scheduled meeting under that premise. In the meantime, I can certainly check with council and get their guidance, and if they say they need to apply for a permit, I can advise Mr. Blue, Representative Blue, and they can just make their application. The clock will start at the next meeting versus this one.
And if legal says that it's fine, then at the next meeting, we could just formally approve.
Yes.
Yeah. That sounds like a reasonable.
Yeah, I like that path, because I don't see concerns with this permit, but I just want to make sure legally we're,
Yes.
that if we say, from this date, and then yet there was no permitted technically activity between that year, that's, from 2021 till now, if there's been work done,
I would think that the general public has a reasonable expectation to believe that this is expired. If they were to look at this, it expired.
yeah,
So for the last year, there was no permit technically.
right,
So I would think the public, if they notify me, I would technically have to enforce.
right.
Certainly it's discretion, but again, I could have. So under that premise, I would say a new application would be warranted. I think clarification from council on that.
Yeah, agreed.
I have one question. would that apply to your authority for me to maintain that tree that's laying in the pond? In the past, you have
Yeah, under
the authority to take care of things that are in this permit that fell in the pond. And I have a lot of complaints. I put it off for a year because of this, and it was not my fault that there were no commission meetings in the last year. So with all due respect,
Well, that's to
that
feel
tree is a
wonder if
problem.
There's some kind of COVID exemption that can allow maybe
That's what
some
I'm thinking.
oversight there.
If we
Yeah,
can
I
have-
mean, yeah, we get it.
During COVID, there was an additional 90 days applications received. So maybe somewhere in that mess, that's what I'm thinking council may have and know and be aware of some exemption here that says, okay, that activity, as long as you go, get a vote from the commission or something.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I'll check with them, but I think that's
Sure.
a good thing to point out.
That's-
As far as removing the tree, you know,
Just tell them to wait.
You can blame us.
So why have you left the tree there?
It's polluting the pond and it's disrupting the flow. It fell right in between the two berms that were put there, and I'm not getting flow, and I'm getting erosion on both banks.
Because the flow, I thought, came at the other side, towards your street.
The flow
from
comes
up
under the
above.
railroad, goes straight at that tree.
Yeah.
There's two 20,000 cubic yard polyester berms from the dredging. The water goes in the center of that. It's not. It's going around them. It's eroding the banks. I want that tree, at least the bulk. I'm thinking of leaving the shank, but I've got to get that out of the flow. Took me 2 years to find somebody who'll even do it. So, but no, I understand. But when we have big rain flows, it just really makes a mess of those banks.
Yeah. Are the banks going to have to be repaired?
Then I suspect the way that pond works, once that's open, when it exceeds the berms, it'll push the dirt back over.
Yeah, so they're stabilized.
So as tempting as it is to say, let's give an extension, I think we need to explore the avenues that Gary's elicited here already, which is legal. And,
Sure.
and, hopefully they'll come back and say, yeah, just give them an extension if you want to.
So we'll just hold. But that's the only reason I'm really here. It's not that much concern about the permit, just I figured it was not my fault that you wouldn't hear from me on that date. So,
so we'll do what we can on our end legally. We'll just keep, obviously, we want to keep the beach club and the commission legal process.
thank you very much.
I'll be in touch.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, next we have a permit referral from Amy Reynolds of All Habitat Services LLC, State of Connecticut DEP permit application for the use of pesticides in state waters for the early season aquatic herbicide application of Polaris AC Complete, imazepar, and late season mulch mow to control invasive Phragmites australis infestation at Creek Road and 23 Marshville Road, East Lyme.
So, again, this is just a referral from the applicant here, All Habitat Services, they've made application to the Connecticut DEP, so this is just a formality, but I put this on the agenda for a little discussion. Question is, do we want, does the agency want a permit for, the application, because it is going to be occurring within 300 feet of an inland wetland, which is on the other side of the driveway of this area. That said, historically, these applications for pesticides applications are made to DEP. We get the notice. We haven't required permitting historically. I know it's been an issue in the past of when the applications occur versus the time of year. And we have a large beach-going population. So, and obviously, a lot of these salt marshes are overrun with Phragmites, and this is where the applications are being applied. So it's an issue. And when typically anything happening in the salt marsh usually falls under the coastal area management and is an issue for zoning.
Right.
They have jurisdiction, but in this case we have some inland wetlands nearby, feet. So we do have a representative, I believe, from All Habitat. If you have questions about the herbicide application, but there's obviously no action needed to be taken today on this. So certainly they'll want to know whether or not they'll make an application. Agency wants to see.
So I have to say, I looked at the map, I thought it was two things. One, I did not notice the waterway, inland waterway close by. I'll take another look. Two, it looked like a very restricted area. I mean, it looks like, because it's on Giant's Neck, right? It's on the east side of Giant's Neck. There's got to be marsh miles up and down on either side there, and it was just a small segment.
Correct.
It's sort of like, what's the use? I mean, all the Phragmites on either side is going to come back in.
There is a uphill battle there. So I don't, maybe you can speak to that, I don't know. The road is called Don, right?
David Roach, All Habitat Services from Brantford, Connecticut. So yes, as Gary stated, this is an initial informational service that we're providing to the town according to statutes. When we apply for an aquatic pesticide application, we're obligated to notify the local inland wetland agent about the permit. Now, this permit is initially being filed. There's some further regulation at the state level. There's a natural diversity database issue that comes up with this site. So there are some endangered and special concern plants on this site as well. So we have some additional work to do with a botanist and plant surveys through the natural diversity database and come up with an appropriate management plan so that we can manage the Phragmites and protect the plants that exist in the site. We start the process with the permit. We work as a parallel with the natural diversity database, and then the question comes to this committee here is if you feel any need to further regulate the activity that's occurring in the tidal marsh area based on, I guess, the proximity of the freshwater or the other wetland, the upstream wetland. In this case, the work will all be conducted on foot, by hand. The herbicide is applied by a low-volume backpack. We're using an invert emulsion to carry the herbicide, so it has a consistency of like mayonnaise, so it does not drift, because that would be one of the concerns with the listed plants present in the site. So we have to use a very closely controlled technique for that. There's also a sharp-tailed salt marsh sparrow habitat there as well as recognized, so that any of these activities would have to be at a favorable time for this bird species. So that would also be regulated again by the conditions of the permit imposed by the Natural Diversity Database. So by the time we get to deep issuing a permit, we're going to have some pretty well hashed out conditions as far as what they want to do to protect the species in the site and control this application. So it is a small area. It's a half acre. This is the area that this client of ours has access to control. So they'd like to manage the invasive Phragmites australis on their property, and this would certainly benefit the sharp-tailed salt marsh sparrow. They prefer to nest in open grassy areas on tidal pans, so this could potentially restore that. Typically, we can manage the Phragmites and establish a robust native plant community that would assemble similar to pan habitat. So we think this would offer some ecological benefits to the site by removing the invasive reed. It could potentially help with water access, storage, reduce flooding potential, things like that. So this is a healthy marsh is very favorable for resiliency. So overall, a small project, but a lot of benefits. So I think that's kind of an overview. If you have any other questions or anything like that as far as, yes, ma'am.
Insect population.
I'm sorry?
What happens to the insect population?
Well, they'll be fine. Phragmites is not a species that is selected by anything specialist, and there are some generalist passerine songbirds that may nest in it, but the mulch mowing is typically intended to control that because that's cut after the end of the season so that there is not any structural plants there for the birds to nest in the following spring. And that has been cut. So that part is already taken care of. And what this allows is the treatment is applied to just the low-growing Phragmites as it comes in at a height of about 4 feet. And it remains at that height due to the herbicide activity.
So the stems are still left there. Am I understanding this?
Well, they're cut and mulched up so that they would revert to the detrital food chain. So they make very good habitat and food for a lot of macroinvertebrates, copepods and the like. Feed on those. A small fish, nectons, similar like sheep's head minnow, shiners, mummichugs would come onto the flooded marsh, and they would feed on the macroinvertebrates that are collected to the Phragmites litter. So it becomes part of the tidal food chain and breaks down.
So all of those insects, they're eating the Phragmite litter, whatever's left, but you've sprayed the Phragmites. So aren't they getting some of that pesticides?
Well, so the herbicide is very specific to plants. It's an AHAS inhibitor, so it actually interrupts the nutrient storage cycle within the plant. It is not something that is part of a human system or any insect system. It's very specific to a certain set of plants.
So Gary, is this there, the clubhouse? Because I know we've been there. Oh, okay, so that makes it a little bit clearer. And what time of year, and also, do you notify the neighbors, or the surrounding properties when you do this work?
There would be an abutter notification, and that would also include any abutter that would be on the registry. But the condition of an aquatic permit is to notify any abutting shoreline owner.
So, on the notification, I find kind of interesting. Why does it take a whole year for that registry to take effect? I have a neighbor who is constantly doing the mosquito thing, which drives me crazy. So I got signed up for the registry, the notification registry, and I did it in January, but according to the website, it does not become effective until January of 23. Why is it a full year for that?
So that would be a DEP staffing, that's when they get around to it. But I can tell you, per the statute, that if you were to provide that same form to the contractor that is conducting the application, and actually they're legally obligated to provide you with one if you ask them for it, and if you give that to them, it is effective immediately, and they would have to notify you every time, regardless of whether you're on the registry or not, as an interim until the registry cycles back around and you're on it. But you'll have to renew with the registry every year as well, just to stay active.
So when would you be doing this work?
So typically, the herbicide work would happen in early June when the Phragmites first starts to emerge. Once you get full leaf expansion, so it's usually mid-June, and then there would be another application that would happen in late July by mid-August, because the Phragmites emerges asynchronously, so it continues to come up all summer. Now, with the marsh sparrow, there may be some considerations for that, and there may be typically a prohibition to September 15th. But I think what we may do is we may manage and actually do a sweep to see if there are any sparrows nesting in that habitat. They're probably not, because of the Phragmites is not suitable vegetation for them, but we would probably have do a wildlife sweep there. These are all things that we'd have to negotiate as part of the conditions, but the idea would be, if we could keep that biomass low through the use of the herbicides, then we're not treating stuff that's 12, 15 feet tall. A lot more likelihood to have drift and not be able to as closely control the spray. So we'll, as part of our management plan, we would work that out. But either way, any of this is all done on foot by a technician with a backpack sprayer, and the mowing is also done on foot with like a commercial gas trimmer that would be cutting the Phragmites up into small pieces. So there's no machine work, there's no nothing accessing the marsh like that. So.
Would you be restricted by the wind if it was a particular windy day? You know?
Right, yes, the label has restrictions based on wind. Again, it's an invert formula, so the idea is that it's designed to not drift. It's very closely controlled and closely applied. Yes.
Does the applicator have a license?
Oh, yes, every applicator would have to have a license and then be working under the supervision of a commercial supervisor, yes.
And Gary, there's no swim areas nearby? This is kind of off to the side, right? There's really nothing.
Yeah, sure. But that's gonna go out.
It's pretty far, right?
It's
From
around,
Underneath the train trestle, out and around.
yeah, it's around the other point, around the other side of the point.
I don't believe there's any swim areas nearby.
So the decision is, do we as a commission feel that we want an application for permit?
It's if we feel that we would, yeah, based on, with the understanding that DEP is going to be in charge of this application, if we would feel the need or foresee any reason why we would have to add more additional permitting on top of.
And that's where I go back to what I just read with the town application there, tree filters. Is this, this is being done in an effort of conservation. Now, to speak to your first question was, there's more Phragmites in the whole system, and you're just kind of throwing your money away, if you will, at just treating this one area. I don't,
Not my money, I don't
Right.
care. But,
So I can certainly understand the concern there. They may want to weigh that themselves as a landowner, but as a landowner, they do have the right to undertake the activity, at least apply for the permit.
if I may, actually, historically, DEP approves these permits, correct?
Correct, right.
Yeah. So they don't seem to have any problem with it.
No, in fact, DEP, not pesticide regulating, or the pesticide regulating bureau, but their habitat management, the WAM, does an awful lot of this. So we're a state contractor with them, and we do a considerable amount of work with WAM as far as very similar type management of Phragmites.
Thank you.
Do you do the raking? Giant Snake Beach had somebody come in, I don't know if it was you, that did the rake, literally raked out things like Phragmites, the cattails.
I think that may have been Solitude Lake Management. They do a lot of the hydro raking in town.
Right now.
Rhode Island, maybe?
Massachusetts, that area, there's Solitude is out of. I know they're currently undertaking hydro raking in Lake Patagonia right now, which is part of the permit that was previously issued. So I don't know that I think they did the pond down there.
Yeah, we don't do hydro raking. Yeah.
Do we need a motion of some sort, or?
No action is needed on this. I think just some clarification as to whether or not the commission would find this activity, again, exempt under 42A as a conservation effort, whereas DEP is probably overseeing a large portion of this activity.
How did you so eloquently phrase that the last time?
Well, we don't technically need to make a motion, right?
No.
Yeah. So, I do appreciate this being on the on our radar, because I think most importantly for us, there's certain town beaches that are right next to where there's some Phragmites. I think that may concern us to potentially, regulate those, or, have a little bit more say in timing and this and that. So, whereas this, I think, is kind of off.
Well,
not directly impacting.
If I may, I would say thank you for bringing this, to the attention of the town, because I know there are other places where Phragmites is being taken care of. Ostensibly, it was approved by DEP, but this body has not heard about it. And in fact, there are beaches close to where that's being done. So I think this is a reasonably good exercise to go through, but again, I don't really think we need to require a permit or ask for a motion of some sort.
Yeah, I think it falls under the 4.2A.
Yeah.
Did we do a permit when we did Crescent Beach, that little pond there that's full of them now? Was there something years ago?
I know we got notification of that, and I know we had discussed, and I think, was it Crescent Beach or was that? I'm thinking of the pond in Giant's Neck. There was some spraying that was done over there, I think, as well. I don't know.
The pond at Giant's Neck was mowed.
Yeah.
The grass, the Phragmites was cut, and it is tidal. It does have.
Apply any herbicides to that?
Yeah, it's
I
hard.
want to say they did, and we got the notification from deep for that. But we didn't issue a permit. And I think, as I recall, the issue was overspray based on whatever they were using at the time. It was a windy day. But nonetheless, it was still within the prime season of our beachgoers. So it was like, but noting what you just indicated about the timing, late July, mid-August. And so if that was what they were attempting to do, maybe it was their solution was not as inert as it should have been.
Is there not a windy day at Giant's Neck?
Oh, there's a few.
I just think that's one of the conditions is that being on to the open water, we're prone to wind, and that's why our selection of method technique was to use the thin invert formula, so that it doesn't travel and drift. Aqueous formula under high pressure, yes, and then that off-target herbicide can do a lot of damage. So it's just a consideration, for us as professionals as to how do we think, the safest and best way to conduct the application.
The other thing I know, not to keep you here, I did, even Deep undertook their own spray in certain areas of town a couple years ago, down in Avalon area. So, I don't recall ever getting a notification from Deep about their activities.
So they make the rules; they don't have to follow them.
But we can follow up on some of them on a case-by-case basis. If there's an
Yeah.
impact to the wetlands, if there's one nearby.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Well, thank you very much
Thank
for the
you.
consideration. Appreciate it.
All right, so there's no pending applications, no old business. As far as the chairman's report, I feel like this month's a busy month, so I think we're gonna, I have a few things that I would like to discuss, but I don't think that much is gonna get done this month, at least on my end. I did look through all the POCD line by line and went through and highlighted different things I thought that we could undertake. But to be honest, this month is very chaotic for me, so I'm not sure how much I'm gonna be able to discuss that tonight without wasting people's time. So I don't have anything to add. Next would be your report, Gary.
I know I had indicated prior to the meeting that I had issued a couple of permits, which I actually put down here. 6 Mammocock, new house, foundation went in. I notified them. Needed a permit. They had already poured the foundation in midwinter. They subsequently have since applied. I believe it was almost 200 feet or so from the lake, so I went ahead and issued that permit. 31-minute mooring, a 3-season room porch. I issued permits with that. Within 100 feet of the inland wetland. 3 Wildwood Drive, there's a new house within 300 feet. I'm noting that it's within 300 feet when it's well over 100. If it's within 100 or less, I'll specify if it's less. 156 Upper Pat was a second floor expansion. It's literally cantilevered into the regulated area, so we should permit for that. I've got several others pending. 7 Barone Road for a swimming pool. 63 Scott Road, a garage with a bonus room. These all still have to be reviewed. 28 Clocrest, some house repairs. And then I just received 1, 2, 3, 4 applications for exploratory test holes. Holmes Road, Grassy Hill, and Holmes Road, Upper Walnut Hill. And then also a new house application for 105A East Pat. That's the only one I actually reviewed in this stack. It's missing the owner's signature, and so therefore I don't think it's a complete application. And the plan size has been reduced to 8.5 by 11. It's legible at that scale, but it was done professionally by CLA engineers, so we'll look at a reapplication there. In terms of enforcement, I've issued a notice of violation to 396 Boston Post Road for clearing within 300 feet of a wetlands and watercourse, as well as the
What was that address again? I'm sorry.
396 Boston Post Road.
Where's that?
Is that the one that was brought up last meeting?
Yes,
Oh.
that's
Across from like
Near Dean Road?
yeah,
Two houses up, maybe?
yeah,
approximately.
yeah.
Yes.
And
So I'm sorry. What did you do? You issued a
notice of violation.
okay.
To them. And as we heard earlier, Mr. Violons had expressed concerns about Mostaway Road.
That's that little
A little,
yeah, kind
I
of
guess, the former gas station, or whatever that was historically. Just to recap, I did report on this last year. The building official condemned it and ordered it removed. I subsequently wanted to require permitting and went ahead and issued a cease and desist order, which I was told by council I could not do because the town ordered the structure demo because it was to the building official. So procedurally, by the building official issuing that order, it I guess somehow affects the landowner's due process rights. So I'm not 100% clear on that. All I was told was the cease and desist will not stand. That said, the lot adjacent to that, I believe the address there is 61 Mostaway Road. The adjacent lot, I have to look up the address. There's, I believe, last year during COVID, the land was purchased by Kurt Hayes. He did a lot split, a first cut through split, divided the lot in two. Because there were wetlands on the property, I do believe he a free split. None of the activity was occurring within 100 feet of the wetland. We subsequently built a house. The activity was within 100 feet of wetland. When the wetland regulations changed to the 300-foot upland review area, they hadn't applied for the second home. So that home is yet to be built, and thus is subject to the 300-foot upland review area. So Mr. Violence points out, any house there, and I would agree, it does require a permit. That said, no building permit application, zoning permit, or inland wetlands application has been applied for as of yet. They've cleared an area up on the knoll, which appears to be clearly outside the 100-foot upland review area. Whether or not it's 300 feet away, I don't think that it is. So that's in question. I did contact and reached out to Kurt Hayes of Hayes Construction, former owner. He since sold the property, but he indicated that they were staking out the foundation location. I indicated, well, most likely we'll need a permit because it appears to be within 300 feet of a wetland water course. Almost in a 360 fashion. You got Darrow's Pond, you got the outlet, the stream flow, all the wetlands that are adjacent to 161. So he indicated that if they needed a permit, they would apply. Obviously, what else is he going to tell me? But that said, I'm keeping my eyes and ears on this because as soon as an application comes through, there will be an application for a permit. The clearing, I could pursue, and so I'm tempted to send him a notice and say, look, you cleared, demonstrate that you cleared outside the 300-foot upland review area. Or if you haven't, you need a permit for the clearing. The area, as you know, it's a pretty large knoll. It's got steep slopes down to the wetlands.
Yeah, it's a pretty important area right there.
So my eyes are on that. I did indicate I would reach out to the owner at 61 Mostaway to see if we can't get them to at least clean up the debris that's been pushed up against the edge of the bank on the water course there. If you drive by you'll see that it looks like they removed the structure and any branches and yard debris, if you will, is kind of pushed up on the thing. Just a wall of debris. I think that pretty much covers most of those actions. I will indicate that Allie Christensen is officially interning.
Oh, good.
So, and as you know, the money was put into your budget for that, so she's already written one grant. So we'll keep her moving forward, and she'll assist with the wetlands.
So I have a quick question on the gas station where there are underground containers.
I don't believe so. I think that was, but I could not.
I mean, where would they contain the gas?
There's room for pumps there.
I mean, if it was a gas station somewhere, they had to have an underground storage tank.
Where?
I'd have to look
Yeah,
back
it's
at
still
the
there.
order as far as what was, in order to take the building down, the tanks could still be
Don't they have to legally be removed?
potentially. I'm not certain on that legislation, but I can check with,
And then my other question is on the transfer station. You know, there's a lot of stuff being processed. It's definitely within. There's a soil pile. It's definitely within the 100 feet. And I'm just concerned with that area. I'd like to see, you know, the town take pictures of it so nothing gets maybe pushed into the wetlands by mistake.
Yeah, I did drive by there briefly recently, and there is a lot going on. Is it all related to construction? Is that what they're saying, or?
you're referring to the Weiss property?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Right.
You indicated the
Yeah,
transfer.
transfer station, yeah.
Across from the transfer.
Well,
Across
I could
from,
say
yeah.
dump, and I thought it would be more political.
Is it the transfer station or?
No, the Weiss
Weiss
property.
Weiss
Okay.
Yeah, I was a little concerned there.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not aware of any activity.
It's like Stonehenge before, because they had all those nice slabs of stone there.
No, not at the transfer station.
Across, yeah.
Across from it,
So
yeah.
at this point, it looks like he's trying to move the material out of there and sell it as a business, if you will. So as I said at the last meeting, I briefly spoke with Mr. Mulholland, and he'll try to pursue it from the zoning, saying you can't run a business that doesn't have a zone, that type of business. And then I'm going to inform him that he doesn't have a wetland permit for that activity.
Yeah, he doesn't. That wasn't on his plan that he presented to us when he was constructing the development there. Yeah, that wasn't there, part of the application.
And then my last question is, a number of months ago, we talked about Whitegate, and they wanted to use the water out of Patagonia Lake. And I'm just wondering what the status of that is, because I think the town is spending something like $1 million drilling a deeper well.
I'll have to look into that, and I can report it next meeting.
Okay.
Is it for like a backup, or is it like just to get more access?
To water their crops.
Oh, go on. At our expense, that's kind of nice.
That's all I have. I'll look into that for our next meeting.
We discussed meeting, Greg, you and I, at one point to go through some
Yes.
things. Yeah.
So you just schedule all the time.
Yeah.
We can do that now, or we can do that offline.
Yeah, let's do that offline. I don't have my calendar with me.
I can reach out to you tomorrow. And,
Sure.
Yeah, that'd be good. We could throw around some dates, times. And as far as that, do I hear any motion to adjourn the meeting?
Just one question from last night, Gary. The individual giving the discussion said something about you cannot act on an application on the same day.
correct.
So if somebody comes in here with an application and we like it, and we go, oh, it's fine, we can't technically do that, it has to go to the next meeting?
14 days, or is it the next meeting?
Well, it has to remain on the agenda for that 15-day period,
Okay.
which there could be a petition for a public hearing. So
So it was interesting last night.
great, I'm glad you found it informative.
I was sorry he didn't have handouts.
Yeah, but you can go online.
Yeah,
gave-
but
he
he was
gave a-
going, and I was still trying to read what he was flipping to the next slide, and I was playing catch up.
Because he gave the website for, is it UConn or?
Yeah.
Yes. You go to UConnClear.edu.
Yeah.
The paper handouts are there. If you'd like them, I can also get you a hard copy. As for every
Could you get me a
condition-
hard copy, please?
Yeah, it's clear.ucon.edu and then /LUA/resources. And it's got basically the same information. But did they videotape that meeting?
We did not record that.
Didn't record, because I
Oh, bummer.
Kicking
know.
myself now that I didn't. Bruce indicated that was his last public engagement.
Oh.
He's retiring in September. So, but I felt like, hey, got Junior, but
Hindsight.
hindsight. But all those resources are available. I can put them together in a packet. We have them already.
Please.
And I can get that to you if you want hard copies, not a problem.
Yes, please.
I have in the past put together what we call a commissioner's handbook. It had all this information in it. I think it was just so voluminous that people were just like, oh, I'm not gonna read that. So the one-page sheet from Clear works really well. It covers planning, zoning, ZBA, and wetlands.
Make a motion, we adjourn the meeting.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.